We are coming to you live from the Hammer, Hamilton, Ontario, for Grey Cup weekend. Yes, you're listening to the right podcast. I'm John Chidley Hill,
And I am Sheldon Alexander.
and this is You Killed It, the CFL podcast, talking
Wow.
all things third down football. I'm covering the Grey Cup this week, guys. That's why I'm talking this nonsense.
I'm at home,
talk
so I'm just at home.
We are actually going to talk about the fifth major sport, which, dare I say, is this the best episode of the challenge we've had in a while?
I'm not going to lie to you. If they made an announcement after this episode that for every episode going forward, you have to compete against Jordan in an elimination to go on, I'd be like, all right, cool, I'm in.
But it's not just that. Like, we're obviously the whole premise of You Killed It is that we're going to go into a deep dive.
Yes, of
but
course.
This episode had an interesting daily challenge. It had hilariously bad gameplay. It had Nerys giving a lap dance, essentially. And then it had your man's Jordan coming in and just showing kids how the big boys play. What an episode of the challenge. Just an incredible 90 minutes.
I know I say this all the time, but what a beautiful cast. Like, imagine the babies that Nerys and Horacio would have.
Oh, I'm hoping for it. I want them to have babies. I was just saying this to Sheldon offline before we started recording.
Oh, I was like, I'm Sheldon. What are you talking? I'm like, what?
My girlfriend is not really into reality TV.
Mm-hmm.
She came home. She's watched some of the challenge with me, but she came in for like basically the elimination. She came home from a night out, and she was like, every single person that came on screen, like, oh, that person's really attractive. Oh, I like how that person's dressed. I'm like, yeah, this show has something for everyone. This cast covers everything. I'm going to say something, and I want you to bear with me on this, Sheldon. Have you ever been to a Hooters?
I have, yes.
For those of our listeners who've not been to a Hooters, should you go, you will find that they have a very diverse group of servers because they're trying to meet everyone's interest.
Okay.
For whoever goes to Hooters.
Can't lie to you. I'm like, where are you going with this?
Buckle up, buddy. And I feel like the challenge is the same way. There is something for everyone. If you're into guys, they got you covered. If you're into girls, they got you covered. You like blondes, got you covered. Skinny guys, covered. Muscle-bound guys, got you covered. Anything you're into, covered on the challenge.
Face tats, they got you covered.
Face tats, definitely. Neck tats, definitely.
Yeah, equal opportunity objectification.
It's great.
Yeah.
You love to see it.
Yeah, I mean, a great episode of the challenge. A reminder, like, there's a lot of chatter, I feel, online about people not liking this. And I don't know if that's just like, I have to remind myself of something that I try to remind other people of. Okay, follow me here. Twitter is not real. So I read a tweet saying this episode is not, or this season's not that good, or I'm not really liking the season. And like, I have to remind myself, which I'm doing right now, that's just one person saying that. So for me to come on here and be like, a lot of people are saying that they don't really like it, when really I read maybe like 2 tweets, it's kind of dumb. But the overall point of where I was going with that before the preamble was just to say, I'm enjoying this season. I know we don't have the regular characters, you know, I know that the gameplay is terrible, but that's kind of entertaining at the same time. And like, there's enough of, they've done such a good job with the twists and turns. That's got me in here.
I think, I mean, you and I often talk about how Fresh Meat 2, which is a season 10 years old, 11 years old,
something like that.
It's sort of like the birth of the modern challenge. And around that time, the challenge became professional. And by that, I mean, people made it their jobs. Specifically, we can name names.
Yeah.
Johnny Bananas, it is his job to be on the challenge.
Yeah.
To a lesser extent, they're gone now, but Kenny and Evan, it was their jobs to be on the challenge. CT, Cara Maria, Laurel, these were people where like this was how they made ends meet. It's not like they were a bartender who did this sometimes. They just did the challenge.
Mm-hmm.
When they weren't filming a season, they were working out, or they were doing the bar circuit, or they were going on Challenge Mania stops, which, you know, those are paid appearances. Like it was their job. And I think that's been generally good, but also it's made the franchise, I think, a little stale.
Okay.
And I think it goes without saying, this cast, they're not professional at this. They're really, really bad at playing the challenge, and it's really entertaining because it's like watching the NCAA versus the NBA. They
So
make mistakes, but they're still passionate, and they're almost there. They can almost hang.
So I'm almost with you, but what I would say is that they're professional challengers for 2020s. What I mean by that is they're professional IG models,
Yeah.
right? Or professional reality TV stars, right? Like
Mhm.
people are here to get on the gram. People are here to like, do their thing, so to speak. But yeah, let's get to this because there's a lot to go through here. And again, I like to give the particulars off the front end. Episode 266 of the You Killed It podcast, episode 5 of this season, which is season 39, which is the challenge, battle for a new champion.
I also have to point out, because you mentioned it's season 39. This is our, I want to say, 10th regular season. We've done 2 seasons of the Challenge USA. We've done
I've lost count a long time ago.
4
you could be
pros
making this all
versus-
up right now, and I'd be like, cool.
I'm doing my best. And we've done 2 seasons of the Challenge USA.
Hmm.
And we did a season or 2 of Challenge All-Stars. We've done a lot.
Yeah. Well, 266 episodes.
Yeah.
Funny how that works, right? Shouts to the people liking and following and subscribing along the way, wherever you're watching this pod, because that's why we do this. We're both really tired right now. And the challenge episode, I can speak for myself, but I feel like you're the same, where like that gave me life. And so being able to talk about it gives me a little more life. And then reading all the comments also gives me life. So we do this for you, the people, which give us energy. And that's the circle of this whole thing. So thank you.
I mean, I made a face because it's not that I'm tired. It's that I've been drinking, which is why I'm a little extra saucy tonight.
I'm drinking coffee. So again, we're just like at the opposite ends of the spectrum here.
I'm drinking water to try to like smooth myself out.
All right, I'll rein us in here. I'll rein us in. One thing I was thinking here is the walk back into the house after you win. That's got to be a great feeling, right? Because that's a setup shot, obviously, of like the person who wins, they're first walking back into the house in front of the camera. That's got to be a great feeling, no? You're kind of getting your strut on.
Especially like, I mean, Kyland, the reason why he was called down was like sort of, dubious. He is returning to the loving embrace of DJ Mel. And like we're gonna get into this more, but one of the interesting and I think amateur mistakes of the cast this season is that they want to go into elimination to prove themselves, not for the sake of the game. There's no benefit to going into elimination.
No.
In terms of making money, you're not earning a skull to see the final.
Yeah.
There's no benefit, but they all want to go in. So I think Kyland, who had previously been eliminated, was just hyped that I'm doing air quotes here, proved himself.
Well, I turn back to what we were just talking about. The reason why people just want to go in because they think they're making a big move. Like, what are the chances of me winning? Who knows? There's a lot of people here. But if I make a big move, at least I have my moment where I might get a pop on Instagram. I don't know if that's true, but we'll see. The thing that really gets me about this season, I can't lie, is week after week, the discussion about the alliances. these have to be the worst alliances in the history of the challenge. Because every week we're being told about the US alliance and the international alliance. And then immediately after, we're hearing them go against their alliance.
So you're absolutely right. And you made a great point previously on another episode of You Killed It, that they like explain how there are these two main alliances, the US alliance and the UK alliance, but like people are hooking up from both sides.
Correct.
And I mean, Nerys, the way she defines her US alliance, it has 12 people in it, Sheldon. There's more than half the house.
Yeah. That's the part I didn't understand.
I've said this on previous episodes of You Killed It for previous seasons, but in my mind, the ideal alliance size is 4 people.
Yeah. And then you have like the sub level of like the people who think they're in your alliance, but they're not really in your alliance.
Yeah. But I mean, like the 4 ride or dies. I mean, it depends on like.
Some might even say the core 4.
The core 4. It depends on if it's, pairs or team or, there's room to maneuver. But if you're talking single players, 4, I think, is the maximum.
So I found this interesting. Off the front end, we get this scene where Asaf is saying he wants to make a big move in this game. We get him talking with Cory, and he's friends with Cory, so he's working with him and not the international team. And he says no one else knows this other than Jay. And this is what I'm talking about, right? The cross-pollination of these alliances make no sense. Then the next scene, after he says, no one else knows about me and Cory's secret alliance except Jay, the very next scene, Nerys is there. So it's like, well, clearly Nerys also knows. So again, I point out, what's with these alliances, right? Like, you're not keeping them a secret. You're telling us that only this person knows. Meanwhile, the next scene, you're talking to someone else about it. Anyways, Jay wants to get rid of the UK alliance. Nerys says that she thinks there's going to be partners coming. And Nerys, you could tell the crew of what's Olivia and Nerys called their crew of girls? They have a name for themselves, and I don't remember what it is. But anyways, their crew, you could tell that they came into this season prepared for the game, like well coached in terms of making storylines, because we've seen Mariah now clearly vote on the opposite side of them, but there's no drama so far. Why is that a thing? Do they know that, like, no, but I'm saying, like, to me, this all seems sort of strategic and planned. Every aspect of it, producered in terms of I'm in a showmance, but really I'm doing this to kind of keep that side of the house close. That if I need to, I can call in a favor or something like that. But also they know they got their core girls and then they got the dudes to make up the US alliance. There's just a lot going on here. But the foreshadowing of, hey, I think there's going to be partners. And we get to the daily challenge. And guess what?
There's partners.
There's partners.
Before we skip ahead, I got to say something.
Okay.
In this scene with Jay, Nerys, and Asaf says the only intelligent thing that anyone says in the house this episode. He says, hey, before we make plans, let's find out what chaos is.
Fair.
Yeah. Just wait. Just wait a minute. That's the last intelligent thing anyone says on this episode.
So we get to the daily challenge, and TJ takes charge here. TJ says, all right, the clock has run out. We got the slow-mo shots. They brought in like the 24 type font for the countdown. But we didn't actually see it hit 0, which I found was kind of funny. But anyways, TJ announces that this is chaos. You will never know how the game will be played. Sometimes it's in pairs. Sometimes it will be in teams. We don't know. We get this challenge where a big truck shows up, and on the side of the truck, there's a huge propeller. You and your partner will be on opposite sides of said propeller, which is attached to the truck. The propeller will be spinning. At the top, the roof of the truck, there are rings. If you grab the rings, then as the truck's moving, you have to place the rings on first off, the propeller is spinning. I feel like that's a key point I need to emphasize here, right? as the propeller is spinning and the truck is moving, you have to figure out how you can get the rings onto a pole that's sticking out of the ground or put it on a target. If you place it on the target, it's 5 points per ring. If you put it on one of the poles, it's 10 points. This is a difficult challenge, a very difficult challenge. What did you think of it?
I thought it was really good and really interesting because it's not about strength, it's not about speed. I feel there is an element of athleticism. I think keeping your bearings, not getting dizzy, keeping calm and cool and collected like that, I think one of the most athletic things you can do is be good at like small like movements and body control.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a different kind of athleticism, but athleticism nonetheless. And like before we get into how they did, what did you think of these pairs?
I was going to ask you that. I was going to say, they were randomly selected according to TJ. Do we believe that?
No.
Of course not. And as a producer, I would not randomly select it either. So kudos to them for that. I thought the pairs were good, but I think the bigger issue that would suck would be going first.
Oh,
that is the worst for this one when you have to figure out the game. Like there's so many variables. How fast does a propeller spin? How fast is a truck moving? Right? Like there's so many things that you'd have to see first to kind of figure out, what not to do. And if you're going first, you don't have that opportunity. You're just going on the fly. And that's not a place you want to be.
I mean, this wasn't clear in the edit we saw, but the way Michelle and Asaf are playing, it made it sound like they could only place one ring per pole or one ring on one of the on the mat.
Yeah.
But as it goes on, it becomes apparent you can put it like if you can get 10 rings on a pole, they all count.
Well, that was also the problem with going first.
Yeah.
Right. Like you don't know what the strategy is because you're kind of just guessing and figuring out the game. Right. And as we talk about all the time, a big part of the challenge is figuring out the loopholes, right? Figuring out the game within the game. And that was a big part of it. And they struggled, right? Asaf and Michelle really struggled at this. And, they tried everything. And the strategy, as you mentioned, was just to throw a bunch at the same time. Who really did a good job at this? I mean, Callum he did okay. He grabbed a lot of them, dropped them on the yellow target. Cory was shook. Raven was not. Then they figured it out and they did a really good job. I think Cory being super tall really helped. Like once he kind of relaxed and then realized how easy it was because he was tall and able to like stretch out and get all the rings around the pole. Like I think that really made it super easy. And the ironic part was, which shouts to how they put the show together. But after seeing Cory and Raven do well, Michelle is like, okay, that's good. I'd be okay with them winning.
Well, I also want to point out, I thought James and Nerys did well.
Yes. Yeah.
They didn't win. Your man Cory and Raven won. And this is where it all falls apart. This is where the episode takes a left turn.
Yeah. I feel like there has to be something we're missing. Like something, because Cory's strategy, he never actually explained why. And as I sat there watching, trying to figure out a reason why, my assumption was he just feels like he could beat Asaf. And so if Asaf came back into the house versus if one of the other guys came into the house, he feels like he could take out Asaf if it had to come to that. But if he put in, let's say, James or something, he'd be afraid of James coming back in the house and then targeting him.
I don't think that's what happened. I think what happened was that Cory and Raven won. TJ pulls them from the group and says, all right, you have to choose. It's a men's elimination. You have to choose right now. I think Cory panicked. I think that's all there is to it.
Really?
And I think he backtracked. I don't think he wanted to admit to anyone that he panicked, but he panicked. I think that's it, plain and simple.
But right off the bat, when Raven says to him, okay, who was the first person she said? whoever the first person was that she said, he was like, no, I can't do him. And it was like, okay. And then she says someone else and she's like, no, I can't do him either. And then the like first 4 names she said, who were internationals, by the way, he's like, yeah, I can't do them. Like, they're like my friends in the house. And then he says the person who we're told is his friend in the house. None of
Not
that made
just
any sense to me.
not just who we were told was his friend in the house, but like we opened the episode with Asaf and Cory being friends.
Yeah.
Like this is not in Asaf's mind, right? Like we saw them interacting in a very like close, friendly way, and it was not a one-way street. Like I do not want to gaslight Asaf on this. It's not just his imagination.
But I also think too, like there's no way that one person can be like, wait, we're best friends in the house. And the other person's like, the first opportunity I get to throw someone in, I'm throwing in this person. Right. Like think about like how messed up that relationship would have to have one person being like, hey, we're probably best friends in the house. And the other person being like, you're the first person I'm throwing into elimination. Right. Like that, those two things don't add up. So Cory, I don't know if like he just, I mean, maybe you're right that he just panicked in the moment because nothing else makes sense gameplay wise other than he's just a horrible player and really would be in the US Alliance, but then tell on himself to his alliance members by not picking someone else in the opposite part. Or I just thought of this on the fly. Is it possible that Cory thought, okay, I'm really working with the internationals here, right? But to throw the Americans off the scent, I'm going to throw in Asaf, who I'm not really supposed to be working with. And so that's his plan.
I think you're giving him too much credit. I'm a big believer in Occam's razor. The simplest solution is probably the correct one.
Okay.
I think he froze. I think Raven was trying to like ground him and like focus on like who they should put up. Because off the top of my head, there's 3 names that are more logical: Kieran, Callum, and James.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just straight like that. That's it. Those are the 3 names. And like later, we see that he's like getting along with James, but it's a new thing. Like they both say like, oh yeah, we're only just starting to get to know each other now. We're only just friendly now. We've never seen him interact with Callum or Kieran.
No.
Kieran and Raven are booed up.
Yep.
So, okay. What's stopping you from putting him in Callum?
It was very weird. I didn't understand it. I agree with Raven, who, imagine what we've been saying about Raven's gameplay early on in this season, and then to have Raven be the one after when they're back in the house, and I forget who she's talking to, but she's like Zara. She's like, man, Cory really exposed himself. Right? It's like, if Raven is questioning your gameplay and saying like you just did something super terrible, you probably did something super terrible. The part I don't get, again, he's working with the internationals. And so I don't get if that's the case, I don't understand this at all. It's just super weird. Why would you expose yourself this early in the game? It's weird. Asaf is really mad, right? He feels betrayed. And he says, Cory's response is, dude, I've known you for 2 weeks. Right?
Known you for 2 weeks, but like getting in the trenches to like protect Kieran and Callum and James, who he just finished saying like he's only starting to get along with now.
And also too, the whole point is that like you've known most of these people for 2 weeks. And the part that we left out of this was they don't know what chaos actually means. So there was a world in which the chaos meant not only is the male going down, but the male's partner is also going down. And Asaf's partner was Cory's friend, Michelle. Cory's friend, Michelle, is like, she's mad too, because she's like, why would you do that? And he's like, no. TJ said it was a male. And she's like, no. You don't understand how this game is played. It's chaos, meaning there's a possibility that it could be the partner as well. And why would you risk that? And some people just watching the show for the first time might be like, no, you guys are too paranoid. Like you're thinking too much. But like the vets watching this game know that Michelle and Jay and them are actually right. You do have to beware for all these things because you don't know what's going to happen. You never know what TJ is going to say. And that's the beauty of the show.
I'm not a big Michelle fan. I'm not a big Jay fan. I understand why she's stressed out though. Like Cory, who's supposed to be her friend, we heard her say like, I think I'm good. Like Raven's trying to make things up to me. Cory and I are buds. I should be all good in the hood. Mm-hmm. And he just tortures her like that. Like, and like, I think what was painful was over the course of the episode, you see it dawn on Cory that he is fucked up. He never says to anyone except maybe James, geez, I fucked up. But like you see it dawn on his face. Like, oh, everyone's mad at me now. Maybe I didn't do the right thing.
My thing was he never said why he picked us off. That's the weirdest part to me.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's cool that like, you know, you didn't pick all these other guys or whatever, but he never gave the reason for actually doing it other than like, he's like, whatever, Asaf, I met you 2 weeks ago. I was like, all right, cool, man. But we get to the club. I know we just kind of touched on the Michelle and Cory conversation. You know, we kind of touched on that. They had a deep heart to heart, and he seemed to sort of, you know, tear up a little bit as she was calling him out. And he's like, he just doesn't care, right? And he's just like, in his confessional, he says, if that actually did happen and you like, nobody can trust Cory going forward watching the show ever again, right? Like he's there crying to Michelle. Meanwhile, in his confessional saying, hey, you know, I don't think that's what the game is. I think she's overreacting. But even if that is the case, then he doesn't care. And that's just how the cookie crumbled. And I'm like, what? Like, who is this dude? Whose man's is this? Right? Like, what? Who? Nobody's going to want to work with this guy ever. His gameplay, I would argue, is almost as bad as your man's. What's Amber's husband's name? Chauncey.
At one point in the conversation with Michelle, Cory says, it's hard for me to calculate risks, especially when I'm on the spot. Cory, if that's the case, you are not meant for the challenge. The entire show is like calculating risks on the spot. And I'll go you one further. I'm going to make a professional wrestling reference. Please bear with me. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm sure Edge from Orangeville, Ontario.
Okay.
He had been advised when he was like a young 20-something-year-old coming up in professional wrestling, if you're going to be like in a scene where you might have to cut a promo, have a promo like a speech ready. Because you never know when they're going to need to stall for time, when they need to go long on a segment, whatever. Just have something in the back of your mind, just in case, right? Mm-hmm. And famously, his career got started because he was part of like a bigger group, and the guy who's supposed to be the spokesman for them kind of fucked up the speech. And they're like, and they just handed the microphone to Edge. And he actually gave like a pretty good speech because he had that in the back of his mind.
Yeah.
Like he had something ready. Mm-hmm. If you're on the challenge, especially when TJ has announced we're entering a section called chaos, don't you think that in your mind at all times, you should say to yourself, okay, who's the man I'm going to put up? Who's the woman I'm going to put up? Just have those two names ready to go.
1,000%. 1,000%.
Cory did not do that.
Cory is so clueless. You mentioned the conversation he has with James. And in that conversation he has with James, right? He says he's mad that his alliance hasn't been talking to him. He's like, everything's been kind of quiet, like ever since it happened. And I don't get it. Like nobody's talking to me. It's like, wait a second. So you went against your alliance and then you're surprised that your alliance isn't talking to you? What sense does that make? What game are you playing? Again, whose man's is this? What? How does that make sense?
It makes
Imagine that.
none.
I went against my alliance, and then I'm like, hey, none of these people are talking game with me anymore. Like, they're not talking about who we should vote in. Like, oh, man.
Let's talk about not making sense, though, because this is all bad. What Cory has done is stupid and indefensible.
Mhm.
The only thing that would be stupider
Mhm.
is if the person he nominated
Mhm.
starts going around asking to go against the smartest, fastest, and strongest man in the house, right? Like that would be the only thing that's stupider.
Yeah, and I mean, again, I don't understand that gameplay either. Maybe like you're trying to, it's like psychological warfare where you're trying to, you know, throw Kieran off his game by softening him up and buttering him up before you go against him. You know, like, I don't know, like if you go into it being like, oh, I'm going to beat you because blah, 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 blah. I don't know, but he actually does say, I want to beat the strongest, biggest, fastest person.
He says it twice.
Yeah,
He
I got
says it in
nothing.
the
I got
club
nothing here. I was
and
trying
then
to defend you
in
as soft.
deliberation. Let me ask you a question, though. If you're a soft,
Mhm.
who do you want to go against? Who's the weakest man in the house?
That's a great question. We would probably say Jay, but we came to realize in this episode that him and Jay are friends and they like hang out all the time.
Yeah.
I did not know that. So if you remove him off the table, here's the other part that I didn't really get. And this answers your question. I don't know. And this is a part I didn't understand. Everyone was so sure. They're like, yeah, Kieran's like the best and he's so good. And I'm like, how do we know this? Like, he didn't even win his own season. And
No.
like all these other people have been on a season of the challenge, but not together. They've never won. So how do you know this person's really good? Like, why is the assumption that like Callum and Kieran and even James, we saw him, he was supposed to be really good. And then we saw him and he wasn't that good. So that's the other part. Like, I don't know what the right answer is, but I also just find it funny that like people are just being anointed based off of nothing.
I mean, that's a theme of the season is that the people in the house, the cast, are so shook that they're jumping to conclusions all the time.
Yeah.
And this is another example. I'll tell you who I think you'll agree with me. The man who is the biggest, strongest, and fastest and smartest in the house and has the best social game is Horacio, like in a walk. Right?
But we've seen his work.
Yeah, but so have
Really?
they, surely.
Yeah. I mean, what's his name? Kieran didn't even know who Jordan was. I thought that was hilarious. And again, great editing by this team, great production by this team. Because as soon as that conversation popped up, I just started chuckling. I'm like, oh, this must be the Jordan episode. Right? Because it's like, yeah.
And just to keep it balanced, the best woman is Olivia.
Really? You think so?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Again, we have seen those two perform in a final. If I said this on a previous episode of You Killed It, they were running second, beating Johnny Bananas and Nani, and they only were disqualified because of a fluke accident.
Yeah. No, I mean, I can't really argue with that.
They could have won it all.
Really argue with that. So yeah, the whole house is up in arms trying to figure out who should be going in. Is it about the women as well? Doesn't really matter because in the deliberation, we have this, it's different at this point because this is where everyone votes in the deliberation this time, which is a new twist and a twist that I like, I gotta say. But it ends up being Kieran. And as you said, good old Asaf, challenging. He wants the biggest, baddest, smartest, all that fun stuff. But then all of a sudden it becomes about Emmanuel, which I thought was hilarious. Mariah votes for Emmanuel, and everyone thinks like she's got to be working with James, but we get no pushback there, no like anything more there. And I found that very interesting. And again, if you have the numbers on the side of the house, why are you exposing and like not showing There's no need for her to do that, is what I'm saying.
No.
Right? Like, we're not at a point where you need to show your cards at this stage of the game. So it's very strange what was going on in
Also,
this voting process.
if James, you know what? I'm going to back up. Emmanuel is the worst guy in the house. Like, that's who you asked to go against, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if you're Mariah, there's no, like, unless people are voting for James, which they were not,
mm-hmm.
just keep your mouth shut.
Yeah.
And then go to James and be like, listen, I'm into you, but I can't expose my game.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
I want to say, sorry, we skipped over my line of the episode.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. I forgive you. Asaf, as he's burying himself, says, I want to go against the smartest. I want to go against the fastest. I want to go to against the strongest. Kieran, let's do it. Come on, bro. And Kieran doesn't say anything, but the expression on his face is my line of the episode. You know that gif of Antonio Banderas like biting his hand and like turning away from the computer?
Yep.
Kieran does something like that, only it's deeply disappointed. That Asaf has just been like, thinks that this is about like honor and having fun. And Kieran's like, you're potentially robbing me of $500,000. Excuse me, $406,000. Like, why are you doing this? Like, the look on Kieran's face to me was the line of the episode.
Well, because Kieran is also smart. Kieran is I think he might be one of the smartest people in the house. You know why? Because he actually doesn't want to go into an elimination for no reason, right? Which is a complete opposite of a bunch of these people that we've seen go into an elimination so far. So yeah, he ends up voting for himself after, I mean, it's already stated that that's what's going down. And we get to the arena. And TJ, as only TJ does, right? TJ gives a legendary speech about, everything is going to be chaotic. We're all here to be a champion for the first time. Then he says, but to beat the best, you got to be the best, you got to beat the best. And then he says, come on out. And Jordan comes out. I got to be honest with you. I did not realize I didn't realize the resume that Jordan has is the resume that Jordan has. 9 seasons, 6 finals, 4 championships. That, my friends, is work. I didn't realize that's what Jordan's resume was. I also didn't realize he won the world championships, which I feel like should be a little something like that matters to me.
Yeah.
But also, we need people to write in and tell us, like, was the world championship season good? Or was it more of the elk of the CBS challenge seasons? That's what I want to know.
So in my mind, traditionally, I think of Johnny Bananas, maybe CT, as the greatest challenge competitor of all time. But you know what? I'm starting to think it's Jordan.
Johnny is the greatest competitor of all time, right? He's the face of the challenge for sure. But I would argue that Jordan over CT, we could have that debate, right? Like, I don't know what CT statistics are, but Jordan doing all of that in 9 seasons, that's a high hit rate.
Johnny's been on like 25 seasons, 20 seasons.
True.
His win percentage is not Jordan's win percentage.
But the difference still
is 4 out of 9.
The difference still is, and I'll use an NBA comparison here. It's like Steph Curry coming into the league. It's a different league than it was, like his rings. Steph Curry has 3 rings, right? But like his 3 rings aren't the same as other people's 3 rings to me, because the league was different. And there was a cheat code where he had Kevin Durant on his team at one point. I'm just saying, for Jordan came into the challenge in a different era than the Johnny Bananas and CT early seasons. That's all I'm saying. Jordan came in a way where, as you mentioned, the challenge was definitely a job at that point. So you're training to come in and just win, and you're a CrossFit champion, and that's where you're coming into this show, right? Like it's a different kind of ball game.
Quick question for you. How many hands does Johnny Bananas have?
2.
Listen, I don't want to define Jordan by his disability.
Hold on a second. This is not going to be the episode where I'm going to like say anything to detract Jordan at all. Cause like I'm going to stop you right now. Cause I know where you're going with this. And I'm telling you that I'm not going to say anything to detract Jordan because you just can't. This performance was a masterpiece. I would argue this is one of the best performances we've seen in an elimination. And Jordan already has like 3 of the best performances we've already seen in
I would say,
an elimination.
Off the top of my head, Jordan has 3 of the best eliminations we've ever seen. When he beat Josh
in
tug of war, when he beat what's that huge dude's name? The football player who's married to Jenna now.
What? There's a football player married to Jenna?
Yeah. Zach. When he beat Zach in a sledgehammering contest.
Yep.
And then who was it he beat in the like light bulb smashing contest?
Ooh, I don't remember. We should look that up. But the other thing is you got the backpack, right? The backpack matters. That's still the best challenge elimination performance ever.
And how did your man's Johnny Bananas do in that one?
He lost to CT.
But like,
so is your point? Hold on. Is your point? Does Johnny Bananas have one of the better eliminations ever? Because I don't, off the top of my head, I don't remember one.
No, this is my point. Jordan, in terms of quality wins in eliminations, Jordan always puts on a masterclass. Like Jordan's amazing.
I'll say this again. This is not going to be the episode. Like if there's an episode where I'm going to like put someone above Jordan, it's not going to be in this episode of You Killed It, because what I just watched from him, and it was a reminder of some of his other performances, which is where I think you're going with this. The way that we talk so much about what the challenge is in comparison to other reality shows, but also in comparison to what the competitors that are new don't understand about the show. And that is a game within the game. So they give you the rules and this is what it is. But then Jordan figures out what the game really is, right? And the tug of war is probably the best example of this because it's a tug of war. You're sitting on a platform. You got to pull your opponent off, right? Like that's what you think a tug of war is. And Jordan's like, no, that's not what this is. And also like I'm at a disadvantage. So I need to figure out and cheat the game. This performance, what he did was just a masterclass. And he would have, I don't know the person that would have beaten Jordan in this because it would have taken them too long to figure out the game. And once they did figure out the game, he changed the game. Right?
In the immortal words of Rowdy Roddy Piper, as soon as they think they've got the answers, I change the questions.
And we should mention the bit here, which is another great bit, 2 great bits. First off, Jordan comes out, and if he wins, he gets $10,000 just for showing up and winning one event, and he gets that money comes out of their purse, which is also amazing because it adds another strategic layer for the contestants, because they need to start thinking strategically now, because before you'd be trying to throw in someone weak, cool, obviously. But now also you got to think, we might want to send in someone strong because we don't want to lose money. Like what a great twist they came up with. This was so smart, so good. That's great. But then there's another twist to the game where they have the 3 polls and Asaf thinks that it's him versus Jordan versus Kieran. But no, Jordan gets to pick the 3 polls. each person's name is on one, like the two eliminated people, the two people sent in. So one says Asaf, one says Kieran, and the other says chaos, which we don't know what that even means, which is great. And production is just great because, of course, I'm thinking of this from the standpoint of I'm here for the chaos and I'm rigging this at some point to make just the greatest episode of the challenge ever. Right. And the way that this all set up, it wasn't to get Asaf out, because having Asaf come back in the house against Cory is going to be great drama. So clearly the move is to have Jordan go against Kieran after Kieran talks shit, being like, yeah, I don't know who this Jordan guy is. Bravo. Slow clap by everyone involved in this, because this was just a masterpiece of the challenge.
A masterpiece, but again, Asaf, like, buddy, give your head a shake. He is disappointed that he doesn't have his name drawn.
Well, he also wasn't listening.
Jordan is.
He's like, wait, what? I don't get to play?
He knows who Jordan is, and he's disappointed that he doesn't have to go against that threshing machine. He doesn't he doesn't realize that not going against Jordan means he's guaranteed to go back in the house and like get revenge on Cory. Like, Asaf is like a golden retriever. He can only see what's in front of him. Like, this is brutal.
Yeah, it made no sense. It really made no sense. He was so stunned, which means he wasn't listening to TJ explaining everything and how the game's played. But also the realization that, yo, you have to go against Jordan, meaning your opportunity here was either go back to the house or go home. Right? Because you beating Jordan wasn't in the cards. Like, that wasn't going to happen. Because I want anyone listening to this, right? We've discussed a lot of things here that people can send in and comment. But what I really want people to let us know is who they think could have actually beaten Jordan in this. Because I don't think anyone could have. Because but even if someone was thinking the game out as far as Jordan was and had like a better strategy, I don't think they're as fast or as quick as Jordan to actually execute it. Right? So let's get to this. Let's get to this.
Yeah. So it's called King of the Hills. And what happens is both competitors start, it's not clear if they have to be back to back or whatever, but they start in the middle of the arena, and to either side, they have a ramp. And at the top of each ramp, there's 4 lights with buttons, and the lights light up randomly, and they have to race to smash the button first.
Air quotes, randomly.
Random, yeah.
So Kieran, Jordan pulls it, and it's Kieran, obviously. And as we mentioned, which I think this is great. So right as we start off, right, the first to win 2 rounds, basically for a minute, the lights are going to randomly go, as you mentioned, right? And whoever gets the most in the minute, you win that round. You win 2 rounds. Cool. Good. And I wrote this down. This is dope. Straight agility should have put James in. But I say that because I also was tricked by this, because this is not just straight agility. Jordan is being smart and not going for certain ones. So as the game starts, right, Kieran starts going. He goes up the left side, or I'll say blue and orange. He goes up to the blue side. Cool. You race up there. You lose. All right. Back down in the middle. Jordan realizes, okay, if I'm not going to get up the hill, I'm not going to exert energy running up the hill. So Kieran starts going, and he's doing well. He wins the first round 6-3. Also great strategy by Jordan, realizing it's just the first round. Like, that doesn't matter at all. In that moment, I feel like that's when he figured out the game, right? And then this becomes about mind games, because the next round starts and he lets Kieran get the first 2. And at first, when this is happening, I'm like, wait, what's he doing? Like, I didn't understand it. I genuinely was just super confused. So he spotted him too. Then he says to him, hey, I just spotted you too. Don't worry. Let's go. And I'm like, what is going on? I'm like, this man's a sicko. So, okay. Jordan, in round 2, he spotted him. And then after he spotted him, he just beats him up the hill like the first couple times, bodies him a couple times, right? And gets up there and he's like, in his confessional, he's saying, yeah, people don't realize what this game is actually about. So he's already outsmarted him, right? In terms of letting him get tired. Then he out physicals him by bodying him, right? I'm like, yo, and then he spotted him 2-0 and then wins 7-4.
And what was most amazing about this, that second round, he destroyed Kieran mentally.
Yeah.
Kieran had nothing left mentally after that. The spotting two, and then just like winning it, like you could see when they squared for the third round, you could see that Kieran had no heart left in him. Like he was done. He was done.
And so this is where Jordan does the smartest thing I've ever seen. Because the final round, right? In his confessional, Jordan says, this guy didn't win the Aussie series. What do you think he's gonna do here? And I'm like, yo, my guy's here dropping bars. Like, there's no way he's dropping these kind of bars, coming in as a mercenary and then losing, right? So I'm like, wait, he's actually gonna beat this guy? Like, at that moment, I was still kind of like, damn, like he's gonna dummy him. So Jordan makes him, at this point, the strategy changed, right? Because we've already established what Jordan was doing was, if he looked to the left and let's say it went to the right, he's just going to let him go and win that. And then you'd come back down to the middle. Jordan then realizes, if I go first, right, and I win, I'm going to get to the top. But then he realized that Kieran started copying him and staying in the middle, which you don't want to do, because if it flips to the other side, you're going to lose. So Jordan strategically just stands there. And what he's doing is, if he has, like, he's going to hit the button, which is going to give him the lead. And if you're standing in the middle, all you're doing is just wasting time and you have no chance of winning. So Jordan just standing there killing the clock, which was so genius. And then finally you realize, okay, I guess I got to go up there because I want the game to continue. And Jordan just waits and waits and waits and waits and waits. And then as he comes close, boom, hits the button. And now it doesn't matter because he's ahead and there's only going to be 5 seconds left. And so he's up 2, game's over. I just thought it was a masterpiece in terms of being first, wait, be in the middle, don't waste your energy, trick him, then let him think that, all right, you have the game figured out, but I just checkmated you. It was just genius. Absolutely genius. I've never seen strategy like that, just outmaneuver someone that quickly.
I mean, obviously the Johnny Bananas backpack is the most dominant elimination win we've ever seen.
Because it's a physical feat. Yeah.
Yeah. But this is the smartest one we've ever seen, right?
I don't listen, again, I'm not going to just put up something better than literally what I just saw. I want people to write in and tell us if there's something that comes to mind, but I don't really, off the top of my head, nothing comes close to what I've just seen. I've seen great performances, but in terms of just outsmarting your opponent, like Josh, the other part with Josh, right, was that Josh just isn't smart.
And Josh is not very athletic.
He's not a great competitor. Kieran is a great athlete. Kieran is supposedly really smart and he's a big strategist and all that. Also, there's a full group of people up top that also want Kieran to win, so they could be helping him as well. And they all couldn't figure it out to help him out. Because how rare is that? We never have that scenario where the whole entire group up top, everyone, has a vested interest in one person winning and one person winning only. And they couldn't even help him. So that's where it's just I don't know. I don't even know what the strategy would have been to beat him. It had to be, you need to get the first one and then do exactly what he did. But you can't do exactly what he did.
Because it's already happened.
Exactly. And he saved it till the third round. Like that. I don't know. A masterclass. And he took their money.
And then there's one last thing we have to add on here.
Yeah.
Jordan starts to give sort of a speech after winning. And then your man's Emmanuel. I know he's your favorite. Your number one gunner. Turns his back.
The level of disrespect. It just hateration, holleration in this dancery. That's what this was from your man's Emmanuel. Because here's the thing, okay? I understand that Jordan just took your money. I understand that he just eliminated someone from your alliance. But at a certain level of competition, sometimes you just got to respect the gangster, right? Game recognized game. You got to tip your cap to the performance that you just witnessed. And instead, it's not like he was gloating. It's not like Jordan was gloating. It's not like he was saying, he was trying to tell people, hey, this is a challenge. Like, you need to compete. Like, you want to do this, blah, blah, blah. Like, he was giving a good speech. It's not like he was talking shit. And then you turn your back. And then it hit me. Wait a second. This has nothing to do with what just happened. This has everything to do with Tori.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, even more lame. Even more lame. Oh, I wish I could go down against you. Really, bro? That's what you're going to say now? You weren't saying that to start it. You weren't saying that when he walked in and it's like, hey, this is who's doing the elimination. That would have been the time to walk down. If your man's Emmanuel was that gangster, you know what he would have done when Jordan walked in? He would have pulled the Jordan.
Yeah.
And walked right down and said, I'm going in. When Jordan flipped over all the cases and went at Bananas. You know why? Even though Bananas beat him in that elimination, everyone respected Jordan for going in and trying to take the man out instead of just talking shit after the fact and being like, oh, I wish I could have gone down against you. Emmanuel could get out of here.
You know,
sorry, I'm fired up.
No, I love it. I love it.
Coffee kicked in.
You know, there's three kinds of people in this world. There's someone who sees a nice car and they say, oh, I wish I had that nice car, and they steal it. Then your second kind of person sees a nice car and they're like, oh, this is a nice car. Fuck this person. And they key the side of the car. And then the third kind of person sees the nice car and goes, I wonder how I could get a nice car. I wonder how this person got the nice car. Maybe I can learn from them. We know who Emmanuel is in this. He's not that third type.
He's a loser.
He's a loser. He's not. I mean, I've been saying this all along. These people have never won for a reason.
Listen, I don't know how you watch what Jordan just did and don't just respect what that was and think, I'm glad I didn't have to go against him.
And again, you know, when they're done shooting that scene, you might have a chance to speak to Jordan directly. Mm-hmm. Don't you want to like come over to him and be like, hey man, what was your thought process? Like, that was incredible. How can I do what you just did? You know who I promise you had that conversation with Jordan?
Horacio.
Because Jordan respects Horacio. Jordan shouted Horacio out when he arrived. He did. Horacio is a very respectful person and smart and would go, hey, how'd you do that? What was the thinking there? And he would try to learn from Jordan. Right? Yeah. Like that's how you become a champion.
Agreed. Incredible performance.
I think I know the answer to this question.
It's Jordan. Nobody other than Jordan can be the MVP of this episode. And he only came in at the very end, and it doesn't matter. He's the MVP of this episode.
So there's only one contender in my mind. And that is
Raven?
No. I mean, Raven had a good episode. But there is the possibility of awarding an LVP. Like, that's the competition. Either you give Jordan the MVP or you give Cory the LVP.
Yeah, I mean, Cory.
With an honorable mention to Asaf.
Well, if you're going between the two, it definitely has to be Cory. Because Cory's alliance, let's reel this back, okay? Cory is on the American Alliance, but he's cheating on the American Alliance with Asaf, who should be on the International Alliance, but Cory is secretly working with him. So then Cory wins the daily challenge and then turns on Asaf, who is also working with him on the American Alliance, but everyone thinks is in the International Alliance. So now both sides just look at him as untrustworthy because you just turned on your friend.
Mm-hmm.
And then you put him into the elimination and he doesn't even compete in the elimination. And now he's back in the house. That's a tough go for Cory.
But I think you see my point, right? Like, I'm not saying that there's another MVP candidate. It's definitely Jordan. Mm-hmm. The only thing that we could say is that there might be an LVP who is greater in magnitude than Jordan's MVP performance.
We'll leave it to the people.
Pretty rough. Where can people find you on social media?
You can find me on the app formerly known as Twitter at Shell Alexander and on Instagram at Sheldon Alexander. Big shouts to the people liking and subscribing to the pod on Apple and Spotify and YouTube and all those other fun places. Really appreciate you guys. This is why we do the pod. You know, it's really fun hearing the people who are still into the show and like the show and who you rep, why you're repping them. And yeah, like when we fall behind, people are like, hey, glad you guys caught up. Like it's just a positive community that we have here. And I appreciate that because it's never like people aren't ever mad. And even if they say something like I said something stupid, which happens a lot, I never feel like people say, you know, like you're an idiot or you're a moron. Like it's always constructive. And I appreciate that.
You can find me on Twitter or Instagram at J Chidley Hill.
That is correct.
And until next week, this was You Killed It.
Why was that so drawn out? What just happened? You killed it.